Well, hello folks. I thought today I'd do a little catch-up on my Suzuki TS185 restoration project I started on last fall. I've done a complete strip down of the bike, right down to every nut and bolt, and started putting it back together, including rebuilding the engine and transmission. Framing was stripped and powder coated. All the high gloss black parts were powder coated. And I've repaired, rebuilt, replaced, re-chromed virtually everything on the bike to this point. And in fact, as part of this video, I'm going to attempt to start the engine for the very first time. Now the bike isn't quite done. I've got to finish the seat. I've got to strip the paint off the pan, and then powder coat that, which I'll do myself. I have a replacement seat cover. The foam I can reuse. It's in very good shape. The meters, the instruments, speedometer intact, I'm getting ready to send out to a specialist to be restored. I just haven't got around to sending those out this last few months, and he's a little backed up anyway, and he asked me to hold off till early September before I send him the meters to be restored. And that's fine. I'll move on to another project to set this aside if I'm pretty much done at that point, and add the meters in later. This is not the original exhaust, and it's not the final exhaust that will be on the bike. The original is being TIG welded right now. I don't have a TIG setup, I have a MIG setup, but it had developed some stress cracks around the bracket, this bracket where it mounts to the muffler body. And when I'd stripped the muffler a week or so ago preparing to paint it, I discovered those stress cracks. So I dropped it off at a local welder that's known for his TIG welding skills, and he's going to, probably already done it, I just haven't picked it up, is TIG weld those cracks up, and then I can go ahead and get the original muffler installed. I only put this on to start the bike. This is from my spare parts bike that I have across the shop that I use to cannibalize when I need things like this. The electrical is pretty well done and installed, and everything seems to work. I've got good spark, the ignition, tail light, brake light works. All the lights work for the meter lights, such as the neutral indicator, the lighting for the meters, etc. is all working. I have not installed the headlight yet. That's yet to be done, and obviously the fuel tank and the front fender will be the very last things to go on the bike. When I started today, I will use an auxiliary fuel tank. I will not use the original fuel tank or the repainted fuel tank. And in fact, that fuel tank will probably never have gasoline in it. I'll always run this bike, very likely, off the auxiliary tank because it's really not a rider. So there's a few other things to be done. I got to tighten up the chain. I've got a side cover on the left side to put on. I talked about the body work, a few other odds and ends. So I think what I'll do now is I'll do a quick 360 around the bike with the camera, and then we'll see if we can't get it started. Okay, I'm going to do a little 360 here of the bike itself. And as I indicated a minute ago, the headlight is not, I have it done, it's all mounted, I just haven't put it in yet. There's the horn, that is the original horn that came off the bike. I cleaned it up and tested it, and it works fine. There's the motor. I put fluids in it yesterday, and I'm checking to make sure there's no leaks. There was one little leak this morning. I had to snug up the side cover. Rear wheel has to be adjusted yet and torqued. All the fittings need to be torqued. That's what that tag is you see right there, by the way. When I put on fittings that I have not snugged up or torqued, I label them not torqued, simply being that it might be weeks or months before I finally get around to finishing that part up, and I don't want to forget it for obvious reasons. There's the taillight. That bracket is original and was re-chromed. If I can get back a little bit. New chain. Wheels are original, the rims. Hubs are original. Shocks. I've got a problem on the shocks because those are original shocks. They're not in very good shape, and I can't or haven't been able to find very good or excellent replacements yet. So I have not resolved the issue with the shocks. Oil tank, you can see there's a little oil in it. The wiring harness was an NOS because the original was in pretty rough shape. Side cover has yet to go over that oil tank. There's a yellow cover that will go over that. You can see this side cover here needs to be polished and mounted. I have dry shifted it through the gears and it seems to work fine. The bike was originally yellow, and this model this year came in two different colors, a blue and a yellow. I happen to prefer the yellow. Anyway, new cables all the way around, new handlebars, excuse me. Handlebars are brand new, the grips are new, the controls themselves, where the high-low beam and the switches are mounted, are original to the bike. I just cleaned them up. The levers are new Suzuki. And as I mentioned before, the front fender and fuel tank and side cover that goes over the oil tank will be added last when I'm pretty well done with the bike. You can see under the seat, a lot going on underneath there. See the toolkit right here. I'll have to clean up the wiring there just a little bit, I think, when I'm done with the meters. Coil is original, as is the CDI unit, and I do have a nice hot blue spark. Okay, so let's see if we can't go ahead and get this bike started for the first time. So we're just about ready to get her started. I got the bike all prepped. I got my temporary auxiliary fuel tank run to the carburetor. I have opened the fuel valve and filled the carburetor with fuel. And once it stopped flowing, which means the flow shut off the valve in the carburetor body, I turned off the valve from the fuel tank only because if something was to start to leak, I don't want it just to start to flow. And speaking of leaks, you'll notice this plastic I put on each side of the engine on the painted side covers. And the reason I did that is in case there's leaks, fuel leaks. Now, I don't use an ethanol laced fuel. All my fuels that I use in my small engines in my area is called a sport fuel because I live in the Great Lakes and we have a lot of outboards, a lot of hunting, a lot of quads, that kind of thing. And you can buy fuel here, particularly near the water, that doesn't have ethanol. And ethanol is very hard on, I've talked about this before, very hard on the fuel system, O-rings, gaskets, and so I just don't use it. And it's also very hard on paint. In modern gasolines in general are hard on paint. So since these side covers are painted, until I'm assured that I don't have any fuel leaks of any kind or dribbles, I cover up everything with plastic. Now, one might ask, well, isn't it going to melt when the engine gets hot? Well, if I was to run the engine long enough and get it hot enough, yeah, probably, it would melt. I take pains to keep it away from the cylinder and the exhaust system, and I'm not intending to run the engine so long that it could potentially melt the plastic. And once I'm assured that there's no leaks, then the plastic will come off. The other thing I want to mention is that I would fully expect this bike is going to smoke severely when it first starts for a couple of reasons. Number one is when I rebuilt the engine, I liberally used assembly lube and oil putting it back together. So I'm expecting that the engine is full of oil right now. Number two, the oil injection system right here, the tank, you can see there's an oil level here. I would expect it will start pumping oil once the engine starts to run, which is what it's supposed to do. And number three, since I don't know for sure that the oil injection is working, I have a 50-to-1 synthetic oil mix I'm feeding into the fuel. So it's going to be getting plenty of oil between those three, particularly the assembly lube and the fuel. And until the oil pump kicks in. Eventually, once I'm confident the oil pump is pumping, I got air out of the system, then I will go with straight gasoline. By the way, one other thing I'd mention is that I use synthetic oils almost exclusively, even on startup. Now I know there is conversation I've seen on the internet where people claim that you should use petroleum-based two-stroke oils to start an engine and break it in, and then convert over to a synthetic if that's what one wishes to do. I don't subscribe to that. There might be some validity to it, but I can tell you that over the years, literally since the 70s, I've been using synthetic oils, two-stroke oils. I use synthetics in everything, including my cars, by the way. But since we're talking about two-stroke motors, I use synthetic all the time. It burns cleaner, less smoke. I just find it's just my preferred oil. I use AMSOIL, though there's many other good quality brands of synthetic two-stroke oils. Well, I just happen to prefer AMSOIL. So this has a 50-to-1 mix of AMSOIL in the fuel, and as well as in the tank is AMSOIL synthetic. I think that covers the basics. Let's go ahead and see if we can't get it started. I'm going to give a little shot of starting fluid. I don't do too much of this, but on a new motor that hasn't been run yet, it just saves sometimes some repeated kicking over and over and over. It helps just induce it to get started. Notice the neutral light came on right here. Let's see what happens. I think it might have run out of fuel. So we'll recharge the carburetor. Make sure that's not too hot. Well, there you have it, folks. First startup of the Suzuki TS185, 1973 model. I don't know if I mentioned that recently. Quite happy with it. I think it fired on the first kick and was running by the third. No leaks so far that I've found, outside a little puffing out of the exhaust, which I'm not concerned about. This isn't the permanent muffler anyway. Oil pump is pumping. However, I've got to purge it of air because air will get trapped in there, and so I've got to relieve that air and bleed it. So I'll do that here when I get around to it. And idles right down nicely, nice and steady, revs up. I haven't over revved it yet, obviously, for break-in purposes, but started right up and settles down to a nice smooth idle. I will have to adjust the clutch a little bit, I've noticed, which is not untypical because it's got all new clutch plates, and after it gets running, and I've worked it a few times, I noticed it's a little loose, so I'll do a few of those kind of minor adjustments. Other than that, I don't think I could be happier with how the project's come along. And in fact, again, you can see the neutral light and the horn works. When I'm finished with the bike, that is, all the tins are on it, it's completely finished. I'll do a wrap-up video on the project so you can see it with fully dressed and as it's done. Until then, thanks for watching.